I call it the 3 shits rule. The first thing is do shit. Second thing is start shit. And the last thing is improve shit.
One of the benefits of being CEO is that you get to define your job description. So I create a job description to say, I'm authorized to be here and kind of build my team around to do other things.
But we spend a lot of time on AI within the organization as well, making sure the engineers have the latest tools so that they can become more effective. So I can actually go out and hire 200 people from the software industry and bring them into Warner and transform things that needed transforming. And I had the ability to change processes and do all kinds of things that had to happen. A third category, always 3, is to use.
Hey, this is Carlos, CEO at Product School and your host on the Product Podcast. This episode is a special one because it was recorded live at our ProductCon New York conference in front of 1,000 product leaders. My guest is Ariel Bardin, the president of technology at Warner Music Group, home to one of the largest music record labels in the world, with artists such as Ed Sheeran and Cardi B, and songs streamed billions of times each year. Ariel leads a 900-people product and engineering team on a bold mission to transform a legacy music company to a modern tech powerhouse. And he's bringing deep expertise from his 16 years of experience at Google, where he led teams across ads, payments, and YouTube as a product executive. During our conversation, Ariel breaks down his 3-phase transformation playbook: how rising stars manage ads effectively, AI use cases driving engineering velocity, why the minimum viable product is dead, and his infamous 3-shit rule for evaluating product managers. It's a masterclass in product leadership, packed with unfiltered world stories and lessons from the trenches. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Persona, the adaptable identity platform that helps businesses fight fraud, meet compliance requirements, and build trust. For example, how can you know you're really listening to me, Carlos, and not my AI voice clone? These days, it's easier than ever for fraudsters to steal voices, faces, and identities. That's where Persona comes in, helping leading companies such as LinkedIn, OpenAI, Etsy, and Twilio to securely verify individuals and businesses worldwide, going far beyond traditional identity checks. Of course, every company has different needs depending on its industry, use cases, risk tolerance, and user demographics. That's why Persona provides flexible building blocks that allow you to build tailored verification flows that maximize conversion while minimizing risk automatically. Whether you work at a startup or large enterprise, listeners to the Product Podcast can get started for free by visiting withpersona.com/productschool. That's withpersona.com/productschool.
All right, we got the seats right.
Oh, Ariel, I just put some tequila in your bag just in case you need it.
Tequila, let's do it.
So I host this I started this podcast 5 years ago. Nobody listened. Nobody gave a shit for the first 4 years. And now someone is listening, which is great. I know that you have a 3-shit rule.
So going right into it. Should I drink the tequila first, or are we going right into the 3 shits rule? Yeah, so let's see. I have a rule that I use to evaluate product managers. I get asked a lot, how do I evaluate product managers? And to make sure that you remember one thing, I call it the 3 shits rule, which I think you guys will remember. The first thing is do shit. Second thing is start shit. And the last thing is improve shit. Do shit is what we spend most of our time on, execution. Start shit is actually very hard to do, especially in larger organizations where everybody's busy. Can you start a new product? Can you start a new line of business? And improve shit is what we used to call at Google horizontals. Can I make the organization better? Things that don't help me in my day-to-day job necessarily, but are horizontal.
So you come from the tech world. You've been a VP of product at Google, YouTube. You're now in a music company. When I hear the name of your company, I don't think about tech, right? So tell me more about what is your product and how you're thinking about the tech infusion.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I was first asked to join Warner, my response was the same. It's like, does Warner Music create technology? And it does, but it wasn't known for technology. The big experiment that we're part of is, can a music company actually create great technology? So we're on this journey that had 3 phases to it. First phase was hiring a team, fixing things that were on fire. Second phase was, can we actually create some value? Partnering with folks who work with like the Ed Sheerans of the world, et cetera, which I think we did pretty well on. And then the third phase, which we're in now, is can we really help drive top line revenue profitability, etc. So that's kind of the third phase of this grand experiment that we're in.
So I want to break down each of those phases because this word transformation is very fancy, right? Consultants made it up just to sell more, but it's unclear how it really works. So let's go and talk about the first phase. Like when you join a company that is traditionally not high tech, like what are those first steps that you had to take to get people on board?
Yeah, so the first thing I would do if any of you are asked to join a transformation is make sure that there's commitment to actually do it. Many organizations talk about wanting to transform into more of a digital first organization, but don't really mean to do it. And it's easy to ascertain whether an organization and a leadership team is serious or not. And that's headcount, budget, those kind of things that as a product manager, I didn't always spend my time on. I spent more time on product. But in the case of Warner, the board, the new leader that came in, Robert Kinsel, who I work for now and worked with at YouTube, were very committed and the budgets reflected it. So I can actually go out and hire 200 people from the software industry and bring them into Warner and transform things that needed transforming. And I had the ability to change processes and do all kinds of things that had to happen. And it was a culture shock, I would say, to the organization. But it's been fun. And I think the results are kind of rolling in.
And I think the takeaway for me here is that one thing is saying, oh, we're committed, right? Why wouldn't the CEO or the board say, oh, we need to be more digital? But I think the next step is to show how you're committing, right?
And the show is simple. The show is budgets, it's headcounts. Maybe a third thing is also, I would ask, what are the goals? What would you like us to achieve with a digital transformation? I think too often I hear from organizations like, yeah, we want to digitally transform. And when you ask, okay, what are the KPIs or what are you actually trying to do? You get very vague responses. So that would be another thing I'd be a little bit worried about.
So phase 2, then what?
Right. So phase 2 was we put out a lot of fires. We improved a lot of systems. We have a lot of monitoring in place in phase 1. And now we're kind of taking our head out. We also have a great team. We hired a bunch of people who can do stuff. And so we've got this engine that can develop software. And so the question was, what should we actually do? And so then we reached out to what we call the business or the labels. That could be Atlantic, it could be Warner Records, folks who work with the Cardi B's of the world, etc. And we asked them, what are the things we could solve for them, but more of like pain points. So just as an example, push a button, get a full report for Ed Sheeran's audience, streaming, etc. So the relevant A&R person can go and talk to Ed Sheeran with all this data. That's an example of pain point. But that doesn't necessarily drive new revenue. It doesn't necessarily drive profitability, et cetera. So that's how I loosely would think about phase 2. But it was very important to build up credibility with the business people who kind of looked at us a little sideways in the beginning of like, can we do anything useful?
So I want to double click on that because I read your title, it says President of Technology. And I see that in a lot of the companies that are going through a transformation, they like to create these fancy titles, right, to represent that we're being more tech. What does President of Technology mean and how did you design your org?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start by saying that when I was just about to sign the offer letter, the title said, think something with a lot of words. It was like Chief Product Officer and Chief Technology Officer and some other words. And I told Robert, this sounds very complicated. Can we just call it something simple? I don't know, maybe President of Technology. And he's like, okay. And that was kind of how that title came across. So it's not, don't read it too much into titles. In general, I don't really care that much about titles, and I would encourage you guys not to focus on titles, but focus about what you're actually doing. And so what I'm actually doing is I own all of the technology at Warner. That one of the first things we did, because the board and Robert were committed, we moved all the technology people under my org. It's an org of about 900 people. And so product management, new function we brought in, design, new function we brought in, TPMs, of course, engineers. We support all the desktop needs of our employees, et cetera. So it's like a wide remit.
So as we think about phase 3, which is showing the money, you see a lot of companies think of tech as a cost center and not as a revenue driver. So how were you able to switch that mindset?
Yeah, so that's what I discussed with the board and with Robert early on. Many companies view technology as exactly what you're saying, as like a cost to be managed. And I use an analogy which might not be correct, but like if you're making tractors and it's really about the transmission and the power and all that, you might think about how do I invest the least amount of money in technology and get decent technology, because it's all about the tractor. When you want to actually start thinking about a transformation, you want to think about technology as unlocking opportunities And fortunately, there was complete agreement that that's what we're trying to do, is we want to create a team that can actually build software so that we can unlock opportunities. And then all of the cost structure dynamics change. Not to say that we spend crazy amounts of money or anything like that. And of course, costs matter. But in general, that's a different orientation. And maybe another way to evaluate the seriousness of the organization is related to what I said about asking what the goals would be. The goals should be something along the lines of unlocking new opportunities.
I always say that the board speaks in dollars, not in features. So I'm curious to know if there's specific OKRs or examples where you were able to highlight the actual revenue impact that your initiatives were having on the bottom line.
Yeah, so it's a challenge when our organization sells music, right? We're not selling software. So when it comes to revenue, what we did was we used the value proposition of our company as a proxy for revenue. And so the value proposition that we're focused on right now includes 3 parts. Everything has to be 3, as you guys know. If it's not 3, it's wrong. It's not 2, it's not 4, there's 3. So the first thing is finding and growing artists, helping them create great music. The second thing is what we call breaking through the clutter, understanding audiences, understanding streaming, and helping the songs grow as much as possible. And the third thing, which is interesting historically, especially for music labels, if you guys are familiar with them, is transparency. So we want to be extraordinarily transparent. And so we released a new app recently for artists that allows them to see all of their streaming, all of their audience, but most importantly, all of their revenue and expenses. So every expense that we book within a day, they see it. If you got a haircut and that's going on your account, you see it. And that's really new for us. It's still a little controversial, so we just started rolling it out, and we'll see how it will play out. But that's how we're thinking about revenue.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk more about the role that you represent in an organization. You said you are managing around 900 people, and that can be scary for some of the people underneath you. They're like, oh my God, this guy is the CPO or president of technology. And then they see you curse and like, okay, he's cool.
Just a dude.
Maybe we can talk about your relationship with the CEO. Like, how do you manage up?
So first of all, I was very fortunate, or am very fortunate, that I'm working for Robert, who I've worked with for 5 years at YouTube. So we have a really strong, trusted relationship. The board was new to me. I've never presented to the board, and now I present to the board frequently. And so the way I approach this is just to be blatantly transparent and explicit with the way I speak also. I don't hide the ball. I will text Robert and say, hey, I just messed this thing up. It's a complete cluster, and I'm going to clean it up this way. And he'll usually say, well, okay, and that's, too bad, but please clean it up. So to me, the biggest thing is just to create trust. And the way you create trust is you don't have ego, you don't hide things. You're just like, it is what it is, very blunt. I'm very much against corporate speak. And I was trained early in my career at Google not to use corporate speak. It's like, the launch did not ascertain the blah, 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 blah. No, we fucked up the launch. It was bad. This is what we learned. 3 things, right? Not 4, not 2. We learned 3 things. And these are the 3 things we're going to do to fix the situation. And usually, if you're in the right organization and with the right leadership, that's very much rewarded. I recognize, though, that not every organization likes bluntness. And that's like a personal decision that we all have to make, what kind of organizations we want to be in. But for me, it's like, I'm just blunt. It is what it is. If I don't fit in, totally fine.
I resonate with that as a CEO because I've been in situations where people try to please me or build trust by saying yes more often. So I think I would like to learn more about how you actually develop that type of trust and credibility within your inner circle.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've learned that many of you are either learning or will learn is as you become more senior, your words carry a lot of weight. But even more importantly, people stop telling you what they really think because you're the senior guy now. When I was a PM2 at Google, it was like we were shooting the shit. It was fine. Everybody talked and a little bit of gossip and you kind of knew what was going on. It's very difficult when you become more senior to know what's actually going on. So I don't have a great solution for it other than going back to first principles. I'm blunt. I say what I mean. People don't have to interpret my executive speak, right, which is a certain kind of language. There's no interpretation. If we do a product review, we're a docs-based organization. There's always a note sent in advance, 24 hours. I put comments in. People answer my comments. Culturally, people were very surprised that the president of technology is putting notes in a document for a product review. So you just kind of get into it with your team, and over time, I hope that people understand that you're just trying to get shit done. And as long as they're on the same page, we're just trying to get shit done, it's okay. And the same dynamic that I have with my boss, where I just like, hey, I messed up. This is how I'm going to fix it. They see that when they mess up, they can just admit it and we move on with our day. We believe very strongly in having postmortems, written postmortems. There were some cases where somebody said, oh, that person messed up, they have to be fired. And I was like, no, we don't do that. We're just going to write up the postmortem. What are the learnings? And we move on from there. So it's kind of like, it's not a one thing. It's not a silver bullet, but there are quite a few tools that you can deploy if it's also authentic and that's who you are, to get people to just trust that you're just trying to get things done and everything will be okay.
I come from a startup world. So to me, when I hear you speak, I'm like, this is a startup guy in a way, like mindset wise, right? So as you think about your own org, there are multiple layers. There are going to be more politics, more processes, more meetings for meetings. So I'm very curious to know how you are able to navigate some of that to still be involved in the things that matter and also build stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know how to do politics. And I've told every employer I had or every boss I had, I told them, I don't do politics. If you need somebody who's like a political savvy kind of guy, and there are organizations where that is needed and appreciated, I'm just not that dude. So maybe I'm also very honest with myself, which I would encourage everybody to be. I'm not political. It's not, I don't know how to play that game. I don't know how to interpret org announcements that are very nuanced of who got screwed. I always have to have like somebody translate it for me. So it is what it is, right? Like I am what I am. So that's one thing I do. Process-wise, you were asking, early in my career at Google, they had like 360 reviews, and I was very offended when one of my peers gave me feedback that I wasn't documenting enough. After I got over my ego, which I hopefully have left behind in my career, I realized that she was right. And so then I went 180 degrees on documentation. So everything is documented. You want to make a proposal to me? My response to you will be, write it down. And I'll put comments, etc. So the process is documented. We have a document called Life of a Project. This is what a product review looks like. This is how it should work, etc. This is how escalations should work. Escalations are super important. Most people view escalations as a negative thing. I view it as a positive thing. I'm not 100% successful in my organization yet to get people to see it that way, but we're evolving. Escalations just make you work faster. Like you don't have to argue with people and convince them. It's like, we disagreed. Let's write it in a slide, take it to a decision maker, get a decision, disagree and commit, move on with our lives. I know that I'm not always right. My wife tells me that a lot. Let's just get going. So there are those kind of processes that I think the key is just to articulate them, write them down, and make sure that everybody understands what they are.
This is a very key topic for me, culture. I define culture as what people do when nobody's looking or when the boss is not looking. So if I were to look at your calendar and try to identify kind of the main themes, how do you structure your time to make sure that those elements of the culture are the areas where you are investing most of your time?
So my time management is a challenge. And one of the things that I think it was Jonathan Rosenberg, who ran product at Google, said that he wanted all PMs to be overloaded, so they're forced to prioritize. And I am certainly overloaded all the time, so I have to pick what I spend my time on. I spend time with my administrative assistant to review every month what percentage of time is spent between different categories, and I try to adjust those to targets. Culture specifically, we don't call out, but I do one-on-ones with my reports, skip levels. I have office hours that anybody in the organization or outside the organization could have scheduled time with me. I live and breathe life of a project. So some product reviews, I'm the decision maker. Others I've delegated. But my goal with time management is to be proactive, not reactive, which many of you guys know is very, very hard. But at least a certain portion of my time I want to make sure is dealing with bigger picture items that I want to think about. As an aside, one of the things I did because I like documentation is I wrote a document of all the places where I suck. These are the areas where I think a product president of technology should be doing more. Wrote it down, shared it with the wider team, got feedback, and then I started executing on it. So now I've got a certain percentage of my time on learning. That could be Gen AI, that could be how WMG works, etc. So I try to be very proactive with my time, which I think as a side effect also makes sure that I'm spending time on culture and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately necessary to apply the principles that we all like to put on big walls, right? Then the follow-up to me there is, okay, you have a big team and there are sometimes things that you still want to do because you like them or because you are great at them, hopefully both. We saw a lot of articles lately about CPOs or founders saying, we're still the CPO. How involved are you in the actual building phase? How much into the details you think you are?
So I'm more of a details kind of guy. I know there's like loosely two types of PMs. PMs who spend more time on managing up strategy decks as the artifact. For me, it's like I'm bottoms up. I'm more in like documents and commenting on things and all this. So I'm probably more than maybe I should be in the build. And I try to force myself to actually do the other thing because I just started from engineering and actually writing code all the way to like a junior PM and kind of grew from it. So for me, it's very important to understand the basics of what's going on. I'm not very good at just boxes on a whiteboard and you do this box, you do this box. I'm like, okay, we'll do these boxes like the new app that we just launched. I do product reviews for it. We do UI reviews, all these kind of things. So I'm kind of in the weeds. So I'm much more in the build than maybe somebody else might be.
Well, I think that's the pattern that we're seeing in really product-led organizations where CEO or CPO are really believers that they need to know what they're building, what they're selling in order to properly sell it. And there might be other cultures, but I think especially people that are being represented in the room, they kind of agree with that. Like I'm like that. And I think one of the benefits of being CEO is that you get to do whatever you want. Like you get to define your job description.
Well, I want that job because I can do whatever I want. But like that sounds good.
Well, in a way, it sounds similar. Like I love being in the details. So I create a job description to say I'm authorized to be here and kind of build my team around to do other things that I maybe don't get the same level of energy, such as legal, accounting, you name it. I like what you said about finding people who are usually busy and keep them busier because they always find a way. However, the people who are not so busy will always find an excuse.
Yeah, actually, on that, one other culture point that I wanted to touch on is, I think we talked about as well, this notion of MVP, right? So that's another example of where people can be busy generating a product that's the minimum viable product. I think MVP is like a disease in the product world. Like I tell my team never to talk about MVP. I need a better acronym because it doesn't sound good, but I talk about minimum proud product. Of course, MPP doesn't sound as cool as MVP, but I try to get people to spend their time and be busy on things that at the end of the day, at launch review, I'll ask you, are you proud of the product you're releasing? It's not perfect, but it's certainly not minimum viable where there's an excuse of like, oh yeah, the product bombed, but we knew it was MVP. Like I'm sure everybody in this room has either said that or heard that. And so I like to keep people busy, focused on proud. That's like the standard. And I find that to be a very powerful word. It took me a while to come to that conclusion. So the proud standard, everybody will make their own decision about that. But to me, in our culture, it's very, very important that spend your time, be busy, like you're saying, but be busy on proud work, not on like, how do we like nitpick the product into something that's just useless so we can ship at a certain date.
The last theme I want to cover with you is obviously about AI. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a good podcast interview. You're in the music business. You are working with world-class artists. And very curious to know how you are thinking about the impact of AI in a way that can help them make more money.
Yeah, so AI is fascinating. Just as an aside, I heard that one of the speakers talk about Gen AI Week. We did the same at Pens Down. I think we had hundreds of people participate. There was demos at the end. So like instilling AI in everything we do. Of course, in the music industry, it's also challenging because there are quite a few companies out there, using unauthorized training on their LLMs and all this kind of stuff. So that's like one category of what we work on is what's the right way to make sure that artists and creativity, is rewarded. But we spend a lot of time on AI within the organization as well. A lot of what the previous speakers were talking about. Making sure the engineers have the latest tools so that they can become more effective. We find, I don't know what you guys find, but we find that maybe engineers become 20% more effective using these tools. It's not a 90%. It's more in that range. So that's another category. A third category, always three, is to use third-party tools. So we are very hungry to find tools that solve our business problems. For example, we have a lot of lawyers. You might be surprised that a music label has a lot of lawyers. What third-party tools can we use to ingest contracts in a more automated way, understand contracts, generate contracts? We have a lot of finance people. We spend a lot of money on paying artists, et cetera. So where can we make them more efficient, et cetera. So that's kind of how we think about it. How do we deal with the industry and the evolving kind of tools out there to generate music? How do we make our employees more effective within tech? And then how do we make our employees more effective outside of tech using third-party tools?
Well, Ariel, it's been a pleasure to have you on stage. Is there anyone you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot in the excitement. So for those of you who are parents, I'm assuming there are a few, one of the great, parents? Yeah. One of the great joys we have is embarrassing our kids. And my daughter just graduated with a computer science degree last weekend, and I think she's sitting right over there, Maya. So maybe we can clap, and she will be duly embarrassed. Thank you. I'm sure I'll never hear the end of it, but I appreciate you guys helping me embarrass my daughter.
Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Lyric here.
Thank you. Thank you.